They say history is written by the victors. But what if the first spark of a centuries-long war began with a secret letter that was never meant to be seen by anyone outside the walls of the Vatican? Picture this. The year is 1095. Europe is fractured. Nobles bicker. Kings scheme. And in Rome, behind the thick stone walls of the Lateran Palace, an aging Pope Urban II paces in silence. On his desk lies a parchment, sealed not with wax, but with fear. A letter. Its contents, even today, remain shrouded in mystery. What we know, what little the Church has allowed to slip through the cracks of time, suggests that this single document may have changed the course of history. This letter, they say, did not simply call men to war. It manipulated kings. It inflamed hatred. And it triggered a chain of events that would claim millions of lives, stain the sands of Jerusalem red, and give birth to the most brutal series of religious wars in history, the Crusades. But why? Why would the leader of the Christian world, the supposed shepherd of peace, ignite such a firestorm? To understand this, we must rewind. Europe in the late 11th century was not a place of stability. It was a boiling pot of desperation, religious anxiety, and unchecked ambition. The Church, once a moral authority, was now embroiled in its own power struggles, excommunicating kings, battling heresies, and trying to maintain control over a continent that barely listened. In the east, the Byzantine Empire, battered and cornered by the Seljuk Turks, had sent out a desperate cry for help. Emperor Alexios I Komnenos had written to the Pope, requesting mercenaries to defend Constantinople. It was a request born from fear, not trust. But Urban II saw something else. He saw opportunity. What if, he thought, the Church could unite all the bickering kingdoms of Europe under one holy cause? What if their swords, usually turned against each other, could be pointed eastward, toward the infidel? And most dangerously, what if this war, this pilgrimage with swords, could be used not just to liberate Jerusalem, but to secure eternal obedience to Rome? Thus, the Pope did what popes rarely do. He wrote a private letter. There is no official record of this letter in the Vatican archives. Historians whisper about it. Theologians dismiss it as rumor. And yet, fragments of it have been discovered in monastic libraries, buried beneath layers of parchment and dust. It is written not in Latin, but in an older dialect, deliberately obscured, perhaps to ensure plausible deniability. This tone is not of guidance, but of command. In it, Urban speaks not of mercy or faith, but of vengeance. He writes of purifying the blood of Christendom, of driving out the Eastern blasphemers, and most chillingly of ensuring that those who die for the cause shall bypass purgatory and ascend directly to glory. He was offering heaven in exchange for blood. By the time Urban II reached Clermont, where he would deliver his now famous speech in November of 1095, the wheels had already been set in motion. But the speech, theatrical as it was, may have merely been a performance, designed to echo the far more precise, more insidious commands already distributed in secrecy to Europe's nobility. According to records from the court of Raymond IV of Toulouse, a mysterious envoy arrived weeks before the Pope's public speech. He carried no visible seal, but bore the unmistakable authority of Rome. Whatever he showed Raymond convinced him almost instantly. The Count pledged thousands of men before Urban even opened his mouth at Clermont. Why? Why such eagerness? Perhaps because this secret letter promised more than salvation. Perhaps it promised land, titles, immunity. The letter, some say, even authorized nobles to seize properties of those who did not join the crusade, labeling them as cowards or worse, traitors to the faith. The Pope had found a way to sanctify greed, and it worked, like wildfire. Within months, thousands of knights and peasants alike were marching east, many of them barely knowing where Jerusalem even was. They carried crude crosses sewn into their clothes and an unshakable belief that their sins would be erased by the blood they spilled. But here's where the truth becomes even darker. The First Crusade was not a noble campaign. It was a massacre. Entire Jewish communities in the Rhineland were wiped out before the armies even left Europe. Women were raped. Children were murdered. And when the Crusaders finally breached Jerusalem in 1099, they didn't discriminate. Muslims, Jews, even Eastern Christians were slaughtered in the streets. One chronicler wrote, "The streets ran with blood up to the ankles of the horses, all in the name of Christ, and all, perhaps, because of a single letter." What's even more disturbing is what happened afterward. Urban II died shortly after the First Crusade began. He never lived to see Jerusalem fall. But his vision, his secret plan, had already taken root. Future popes would refine the model. Crusades became less about the Holy Land and more about political power. There were crusades against heretics, against fellow Christians, against children. Yes, there was even a children's crusade. The church had discovered the terrifying alchemy of fear, faith, and ambition. And the blueprint, the very foundation of it all, may have been encoded in that first hidden message. Historians argue, of course. Many refuse to believe in the letter's existence. After all, what leader would admit to planting the seeds of centuries of warfare? The church certainly never will. But the signs remain. The synchronization between European nobles long before the public speech, the discrepancies in historical records, and the handful of parchments scattered in monasteries from France to Sicily, all echoing the same phrases. Purify the land. Kill for salvation. Claim what the Lord has denied others. Were these the words of Christ? Or were they the words of a pope playing God? And now, as we look back from the safety of centuries, we must ask ourselves, how many lives were lost because of one man's ambition? How many children died on roads to nowhere because of a war they didn't understand? How many empires rose and fell on the back of a promise that heaven could be earned by spilling blood? The letter may never be found in full. The Vatican will deny it. The Church will bury it deeper. But its consequences echo through time. Not in stone, but in scars. Not in scripture, but in silence. And perhaps that is the most powerful weapon of all. An idea so deeply planted that it moves nations, topples kingdoms, and turns men into zealots, without ever showing its face. A secret letter, a spark in the dark, and the fire it started still burns.